Genesis chapter 32, there are a lot of things in our world that intrigue, fascinate, or even perplex, aren't there? Just if you were to sit back and get out of routine and maybe not focus on everything you have to get done and just be an observer of life, an observer of nature, an observer of things, I think you would find stuff that just captivates you. It at times grabs your mind and you keep going with it to the point where it drives you bonkers. And there's a couple of things. Nature has a lot of them. I'm intrigued by these mountain goats who have hooves, who can climb on the sides of mountains. I think that's incredible. I think it's amazing. It fascinates me. It perplexes me. I can barely get up a ladder, and I've got 10 fingers and toes. But these guys, and there's countless animals, countless environmental phenomena, and geological mysteries that just, wow, it's amazing, and I can't understand it. But then there's just very basic things. I am amazed anytime I sit down to eat, or especially going out to eat, that there is enough food in this world to feed. And I know there are famines, and I know there are people starving. I understand that maybe we're not feeding everybody, but just America, anytime I eat a piece of meat, in particular beef, I just ask myself, how are we producing that many cows at the rate we're consuming them? Chickens. How many chickens we're killing right now? It can't be enough to feed all the Chick-fil-A people, the McDonald's people, the Burger King. Every restaurant's got chicken, the chicken nugget, chicken wings. I mean, if I do my math, a chicken only has so many wings. And when you order a bucket, you just took out a whole lot of chickens. So I don't know how there are this many chickens. The Super Bowl, I do not know. And there's this shortage of chickens. It blows my mind. Then there is the technology side of it. I know I say this a lot. I'll go to my grave just blown. And I don't think I'm that smart, so I think this is normal, but maybe not. Maybe you all get it. I don't know how right now, somewhere in the world, a dude has a camera that has no cord to it. No cord. And they are video shooting, I'll say, an event in high definition, and then it goes from that device that they're holding with no cord into the air, somehow gets all the way across the other world and jumps out of somebody else's device that has no cord or anything, and they can see it almost simultaneously in high definition with real audio, and it matches. I do not understand that, and I can't. I don't know how we can put anything. I wish I could throw thoughts through the air and it could get home so when I get there it's waiting for me, but I can't do it. I don't know how anybody does it. There are far smarter people in the world, but it boggles me. It fascinates me. And then I'll be honest with you, on a morbid level, I am shocked on a regular basis that there aren't more deaths. We all know we're going to die, and so everybody does die, but just driving around, isn't it amazing that there aren't accidents every second of every day in your neighborhood? I know there are throughout the world, but accidents are rare. How is that possible? People are on their phones, people are daydreaming, people are doing makeup, people are reading books. I mean, people are eating, people are drinking while they're driving, and we're not getting in accidents. Medical stuff. Why aren't more people passing out? Why aren't more people? The planes go up in the air. I love to fly. And every time I go up in the air, I thank the Lord for a good life because it could be my last trip. I mean, come on now. We're going up in a chunk of metal, hundreds of feet into the air, and I'm going over the ocean soon. I don't have enough gas in my car to go a couple hundred miles, and we're going to go all the way over the ocean without gassing up. It is mind-boggling. When a plane comes down, the world stops, and how did this happen? How did it happen? We put tons of metal up in the sky, and we're surprised that it falls down. People smoke, people eat like they've never eaten before on a regular basis. How are people not dropping over left and right from all these potential illnesses, diseases? It baffles me. I know you might say, well, death is everywhere. I don't think it is everywhere, truthfully, based on what we do and how we live. It really is amazing. I can go on about the different things that intrigue, fascinate, or perplex me. You'll have your own list. But we're going to talk about one of the things that does intrigue me. It does fascinate me. And yes, it does perplex me. And that is the undeniable truth and undeniable reality that human beings generally don't change. We are who we are. From the womb to the tomb, we generally don't change who we are. Now, we're very good at adapting to our surroundings. We're incredibly good at adapting to the weather and to people around us socially. We're good at adapting to health and age-related things. But as far as who we are, we almost never change. For example, Mom, if you have a child in your womb and you notice that when you're playing music, that child moves around. When that child comes out of the womb, they're going to be inclined to like music. And for the rest of their life, till they get to the tomb, they're going to be musical. Nothing changes that. Nothing deters them from liking music. Rarely does someone begin to like music who never liked music from the very conception of life. If you're married to a lazy man, he was lazy in the womb. I'm serious. He didn't move a lot. And he's not going to move a lot now. And he's going to be lazy all the way to the grave. That's just who he is. I'm not here saying like he's a terrible person for being lazy. That's who he is. You have your thing, I have my thing. That's who we are. Men think like men. Men act like men. Women act like women. Women think like women. That's from literally conception and all the way till death. And you say, well, I don't know, I've changed a lot. I bet you haven't changed as much as you think you've changed. If you have changed, it's because of a divine intervention called salvation. And even that, when you forget you're saved, when you don't act like you're saved, when you deny the Holy Spirit's presence, guess who you act like? Guess who you think like? Guess who you behave like? The person that was in the womb. You can watch these kids run around, and I watch some of them, and I just tell them, I can't wait to watch you grow up. Because you are a piece of work at 3 or 4 or 5. You're going to be a piece of work at 45. It's just who we are. I mean, quiet kids are quiet adults. Loud kids are loud adults. We really don't change. And if you think about that in itself, just think about the fact that we are taught by our parents, we are instructed by our coaches, we are led by our teachers, we are then controlled by our government and by our employers, and then we get married and oh wow, and yet we are still generally the very same as we've always been, just more refined. We know how to kind of dial back who we are around certain people and around certain things. We know how to ramp it up around certain people and certain circumstances, but we're the same. We're just adapting. So if you're prone to run. You just know when to run and when not to run. But you're still prone to run. If you're prone to hide, you hide. You just know who you can and can't hide around. So to me, the genetic makeup of mankind, coupled with his stubborn, resilient spirit and his absolute terror of fear of change, makes us, unfortunately, bad. When we have deficiencies and weaknesses, tendencies towards evil, it's very hard to not be that way. So we are who we are instinctively, naturally, and perhaps the worst of it all is permanently. It should terrify every parent who sees a child with a serious problem, because it is going to take that much work to give that kid any shot at overcoming that. And if it doesn't happen early, it almost never happens. I have your attention. Fantastic. Because this is one of my favorite stories in the Bible. It's going to offer you the hope of real change. Now, I am speaking to believers today. I am trusting and assuming you're listening to me because you have accepted Christ as your Savior. So that is the catalyst to true change. To have a relationship with God, you need to be born again. So if you're not born again, start there. See me afterwards. I'll tell you how to easily become a Christian. It's all about faith, not about works. But once you become a Christian, now you can have a relationship with God. And that is where real change takes place. It's the only place change can take place. Genesis 32, it gives us hope that change can happen in our lives. And it gives us a real recipe, but just note, it's not going to take us to a psychiatrist. It's not going to take us to the hospital. It's not going to take us to a medical facility or a pharmacy or an educational institution to find change. You don't need insurance. You don't need tuition. You can go here. You can do this. You can go there without an appointment, and you can be what Jacob became. Jacob was who he was. He was that way from the womb, but he became a different man, all because of Genesis chapter 32. If you don't know Jacob, let me give you a story. Jacob is the grandson of Abraham. And I don't want you to think I'm beating up on him at all, because I'm not. He was who he was from the womb, and he had no say. He never asked, God, can you give me this DNA and not give me that DNA? He never said, hey, God, the creator, can you give me this parent and not that parent? No, he woke up in this world in the womb with his identity already unknowingly formed and established. His personality was already given to him by his ancestors, and he woke up in the womb who he was. How do I know that? Well, Jacob was a guy who saw people as opportunities. Jacob was very good at finding the easy way out of difficult situations. He knew people, if he picked the right person at the right time, could get him out of heavy-duty responsibility or problems from the womb. If you know how he was born, he was a twin. His brother's name was Esau. And it's time for their birth. And the Bible tells us that Esau came out first. Esau was a strong man. Red, hairy all over. He comes out, and Jacob's like, that is a lot of work. I see my brother groaning. I see him grunting. I see him struggling, getting through that canal. To me, it makes sense just to grab a ride. And he grabs onto the heel of Esau, and boop, he comes out fresh, ready to go. Esau's exhausted. What's the problem, big bro? I had to pull your sorry butt out of the womb. Jacob's like, hey, stinks to be you. And for his life, he did that. He was the second born. Well, in a Jewish family, a patriarchal family, there is something the firstborn gets. It's the birthright. He also gets a blessing, and I believe that's because parents are learning how to parent on him, so he gets the benefit of making out from that. But Jacob couldn't overcome the fact that he was the second born. He was, lazy, and he used Esau to get out of the womb. That cost him. But he could get both of those back. He just had to wait for the right time. And one day Esau came in from hunting, and boy, he was exhausted. He was starving. And he said to his brother, who was real good in the kitchen, hey, can I have some of that soup? And Jacob says, for a price. I'm your twin brother. We're close. We hang out. You help me, I help you. Not today, boy. You hungry? Just give me your birthright. And Esau says, I'm going to die if I don't eat. Sure, have my birthright. And if that wasn't enough, Jacob wanted the blessing that went to the firstborn, and it was his mom. Where do you think Jacob got his personality? His mom suggests to her precious little boy, not her concern for her husband, but to her precious little boy, oh, Jacob, we can get that blessing. I can trick your father. You just have to wear these goat skins. You'll smell like Esau. You'll make venison just like your dad likes. He's getting old, can't taste anyways, can't hear anyways. You'll go in there, you'll get the blessing. Now, Jacob's response reveals his personality. You know what his response was? Oh, Mom, we shouldn't do that to Esau. I already took his birthright, and I've been kind of mean to him. We should at least give him the blessing. No, not Jacob. What does Jacob say to his mom? Mom, we shouldn't do that to Dad. Dad brought us into the world. Dad provides for us. I'm to honor my father and my mother. I'm to take care of my dad in his old age. No. The only thing he cared about was, Mom, what if I get caught? That is what he said. He said, Mom, if I do this, Dad will know my voice, and I'll be like a deceiver to him. He didn't care that he was going to deceive his dad. He just didn't want to get caught. You know what Jacob's name was? Jacob by birth, because he was called supplanter, meaning he replaces, he takes over, he takes something that is somebody's and he uses it. The word heel is in there because he grabbed onto his brother's heel. It wasn't a flattering name. We know it today, and no offense to you, Jacob, back there in the sound booth. We love you. You're good. But Jacob wasn't a flattering name in the Bible. It was identifying him for who he was, which wasn't a good guy. So he didn't really estimate how bad it would be to upset big brother who's a hunter, who's strong and mean and nasty. He got very upset with Jacob. So Jacob had to flee from his house. He would go to a faraway land, and he would be there for 20 years where he would get 2 wives, all these kids, and all this cattle. Spoiler alert, Jacob used his father-in-law to get more cattle. I mean, the guy was a weasel. He was just somebody who took advantage of everybody. He saw opportunity and he snatched it. Well, eventually, God said, it's time for you to go back home. And God called him back to where he was born and raised to get him back into the promised land that God gave to Abraham. And the problem is that Esau's living there. And Jacob is a weasel. He's not a fighter, he's a weasel. So he's scared of going back home knowing what he did to his brother, stole his birthright, stole his blessing, and left on bad terms. So let's read what happens in Genesis chapter 32. I will talk fast, no doubt, so stay with me if you would, please. Verse number 1, and Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's host. I only start there so you know Jacob is able to discern evidently the difference between a normal man and a supernatural man. Jacob is able to see a guy who is a guy and a guy who is actually an angel or a minister of God. He had that ability, and we don't know how or why, but he did. That will come into play. And anyways, he sees God's host, and he's now starting to think, like, how am I going to get ahead of this before my brother kills me? And so he says, I'll be diplomatic. And he sends a messenger ahead and says, hey, go tell Esau I'm coming home. That was his test to see if Esau was upset. And the messenger comes back to Jacob, hey, boss, yep. Esau knows you're coming. In fact, he's already on his way. Really? How did he look? Well, he's got 400 armed men with him. And Jacob, being the weasel he was terrified, which is why verse 7, we read, then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. Did I mention that you and I are who we are from the womb all the way to the tomb? And that when we are faced with crisis, we do what we only know what to do. We do who we are. And so here Jacob is in the crises of his life. He's got all these problems, his brother being the biggest one. And what does he do? He does what only he knows how to do, and that is to use people to get his way. So what does he do? He comes up with a plan. His plan, this patriarch, this man of the house who has 2 wives and all these kids, all these employees, what's his plan? I'll divide my family and my employees into different bands, different groups, and I'll send the ones I don't like as much in front of me, and then the ones I like a little more than them, behind them, but still in front of me. And I'll put the people closest to me in front of me, but I'll be behind all of them. Now, that way, if Esau and his 400 men, they start killing off my wives and my kids and my employees, then I know I have some time to get out of here. This was your plan, to lead from behind and essentially put women and children ahead of you so you have enough time to get away. So that, if they're slaughtering your family, you have, 12 sons or at this point 10 to get out. Like, this is insane. This is the type of man you are. This is crazy. This is Jacob. This is who he was. The moment he saw his big brother's heel, well, that looks easy. He grabbed that all the way to the point where now his wives and his kids are just shields, they're sacrificial lambs. If that was you and you woke up every day, looked in the mirror, wouldn't you just say, boy, I hate living with you. You're terrible. You only care about yourself. I mean, if you were honest, you would do that. After the 80th time that somebody said to you, you only care about yourself, you would eventually say, yeah, I do. Now, again, Jacob wasn't all bad. He did have a walk with God, and for that, he is to be commended because that is where only real change takes place. Here we go. Ready? Verse 9. And Jacob said, he gets away, by the way. And Jacob said, not from Esau, but from all this stuff. He said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord which said unto me, return unto thy country and to thy kindred, and I will deal well with thee. I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies. And that's what your nature will eventually lead you to believe, because you are and I am depraved. Verse 11, deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him. Note the order, lest he will come and smite me and the mother with the child. Still only cares about himself. So he divides his family and estate, got ready to implement his selfless plan the next day when Esau was expected to arrive. Verse 22. And he rose up that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 women servants and his 11 sons and passed over the ford Jabbok. That's not anything to do with cars. A ford is where a river has a shallow spot and you pass over a ford. Remember, we're talking pre-bridges, and so fords were very important. That's where you would be able to get across the river. They're coming across Jordan. And in verse number 23, and he took them and sent them over the brook and sent over that he had. And verse 24 says, and Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. If you're taking notes, write these 4 things down. They'll help you. I promise you. Number 1, real change requires being alone with God. Now, this is a strange passage with a strange encounter. Why was this man that he wrestled with where he was at that time? What was this guy doing in the middle of the night there? And what was he doing that led Jacob to go all like football on this guy and tackle him and wrestle with him? Like, did this man antagonize Jacob? Did this guy look at Jacob the wrong way? Was Jacob just in a mood and wanted to wrestle with anybody he found? It just is strange, except we knew in verse 1 and 2 that Jacob was able to identify and discern an angel from a man. So this man that he wrestled with, he must have been able to discern. He was no ordinary man. And so here he is before facing his big brother, before the big day where his life could be over. He got alone from his wives and his servants and his kids, and he got alone with God, and he was going to likely pray to God for mercy and have some serious reflection. And based on the rest of the passage, we know that it was indeed God himself, a theophany. But ladies and gentlemen, if you get nothing else this morning, please get this. If you have any chance of changing who you are, any chance, you have to get alone with God. Anything short of that, you will be exactly who you are from the day you were born. You will wear the same things. You will act the same way. You will speak the same way. You will refine it a little bit based on your surroundings, but you will be who you are. You've got to get alone with God. Now, every generation of Christianity has its unique set of challenges. Here we are in this generation. Our challenges are different than the challenges of the first century. They were persecuted so much more fiercely than we are today. There are generations that dealt with more luxury even, or more fornication. Like, every generation has its thing. Our generation, I don't believe, is any more immoral than any other generation before us. I don't think our generation in any way is dealing with persecution than any Christian generation before us. But I will tell you, there is something we have that is confronting us that no other generation of Christianity has ever had. It is an era of time unique to us, and it is a lack of alone time. There is a lack of alone time because there is the presence of screen time. No other generation had what we have today. It used to be, not too long ago, that when you got up for breakfast, you would sit and eat breakfast without a TV, without a screen, without your phone, without your tablet, and you would eat breakfast with just you and you. Hopefully you and God. But now we use every moment, every minute to check something out. So we eat breakfast with the TV on. We eat breakfast with the tablet on. We eat breakfast with the screen on. We're going to check our news feed, check our social media feed. We're going to look at the scores. We're going to watch replays. We're going to see the game. We look at everything all the time. There is no such thing as downtime. Ladies and gentlemen, you understand, even when men and women go into the restroom at home, it is a chance to get work done on a screen. What happened to downtime? It's gone. You say, well, I have downtime all the time. What do? I bet you play a game on your phone. I am astonished how many people who are supposedly so busy in their lives, when they finally sit down, they are still playing a game on their phone. And there's nothing wrong with a game unless you have lost the art of downtime, of alone time. Downtime in itself can lead to laziness, but alone time with God, alone time with your thoughts, alone time is where change really begins. Ladies and gentlemen, our generation, your day and age, my day and age, there's always something to look at, always something to scroll, always something to watch, always something to read, always something to play. The page never ends, the posts never stop, the reels never cease, and the game is never complete. Unlimited lives. What Christian generation had such a thing to deal with? Now, screen time in itself, as long as it's not immoral screen time or excessive screen time, isn't bad time. But I'd be lying if it isn't keeping us who we are. And our marriages, our families, our children are not better because of a lack of alone time. Screen time as a way of life for our society is robbing us of habitual alone time with God. And you and I will remain exactly who we are if we cannot be left alone with God. We will keep thinking the way we've always thought and keep doing what we've always done if we don't intentionally and consistently get alone time with God as a part of our daily life. You know, God will not change a person who can't find time for Him. And God won't change a person who won't find time with Him. You say, what are you suggesting? Find a forest, find a park, find a sidewalk. When you get in your car, do not turn on the radio. Do not go to your smartphone and put on your stream or put on your audio. Just find time where it's you and only you and God. Nothing else is happening. Even if it's driving, pay attention to the road, but don't let the guy on the radio tell you how to think. Don't let the person on the news tell you how to think. That doesn't make him wrong, but you're not giving God any time. Jacob was a changed man after this passage because he first was found alone. What happened to the chair in the backyard? What happened to the swing in the backyard without the phone in your hand? Ladies and gentlemen, we have to confront this. We have to teach our children how to be alone with God. Verse 25, I've got to move. You can see the passion in me because I think it hinges, our change and success hinges on this fact. Verse 25. By the way, if you're too busy for alone time with God, then whoever you see in the mirror is who you will always see in the mirror. Verse 25, and when he saw that, he, the angel, prevailed not against him, Jacob. He touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he, the angel, said, let me go, for the day breaketh. And he, Jacob, said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. Now we see the nature of and the reason for this early morning wrestling match. If you've read this and you've thought to yourself, how is Jacob holding his own against an angel? Because an angel can just bink and off he goes. Well, this wasn't a wrestling match. It wasn't like the picture. I mean, there were no, count to three and almost pin you down. This was the angel had Jacob on his leg. Like I would have Luca, my little nephew, on my leg. There would be no wrestling match. I could just, Luca, boonk, and he would go that way. But if little Luca is resilient enough, he could lock those hands in, and I would be just dragging him, and eventually it would be annoying. And I would say, Luca, let me go. I could make him, but I don't want to hurt him. And so too in our story, I think Jacob grabbed onto a man he thought was an angel, desperate for a blessing, and he's just grabbing this angel, and the angel's like, bro, get off of me. Just stop it. And no, I'm not letting you go. And he tried to get away, and Jacob wouldn't let him go. I think that's the nature of what's happening here. This wasn't a UFC match where there was, some equal strength. No, Jacob held on like his life depended on it, which is why number 2, I'm going to tell you, you've got to, if you want to have any real change, you have to get alone with God, and then you have to have bold aggression toward God. Let me explain, lest you think this is irreverent in any way. If you want to experience real change, you've got to get really aggressive with God, and He's not at all afraid of your aggression. In fact, if you would be aggressive with God, He would love it. When you're aggressive with somebody, God, give me a blessing, God, and you're just grabbing onto him, that shows God that you think you can't live without him. Who wouldn't want to feel that way if you're God? Now, ladies, you can appreciate this. Ladies, how many of you, don't raise your hand or say anything out loud, it would be a long ride home, but how many of you ladies wish your husband would be more aggressive with you? I don't mean tell you what to do around the house. I mean not give in to you when you push him away a little bit. How many of you women would like your husbands to just come at you and be aggressive in trying to pursue you and be aggressive in trying to love you and work through all that relational hardship and not so easily walk out the door and go into the garage? Guys, pay attention. I know your wife at times seems like she's pushing you away. You just got to be more aggressive. And that's how God wants us to be with him. The Word of God says this, let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy in time of need. He that cometh to God, Paul writes, must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. If you're sick of who you are, if you're sick of how you are, if you're sick of what you are and what you do, you've got to get alone with God with a level of aggression that God sees you're serious and that you're not going away that easily. We rarely change, to be honest with you, because we rarely do what Jacob did. We rarely show God how serious we are. We rarely come to God with such intensity. We rarely come to God with such aggression. We come tiptoeing to God, asking God to bless us and to help us, but rarely do we come to God saying, God, change me. God, bless me. I won't leave until you do something to make me different. We rarely do that, especially when we rarely get with God. Why don't we do that? I think because we're rarely convinced we need to change. Everybody says, I've got problems. Well, they all have problems. We rarely see us for who we are, which is why we've got to keep reading quickly. Verse 27, and he, the angel, said unto him, Jacob, what is thy name? And he said, Jacob. Now, I got to tell you, this is to me a strange thing to ask a guy that you just met in the middle of the night who is wrestling with you. I have a creek near my house. I like to walk on the sidewalk near my house, but once in a while, like I did this morning, and I think on Thursday, I went down to a creek, and there's a path there, and it's relatively desolate for being in the middle of West Seneca, but I'm on this path just enjoying the solitude and peace of walking with the Lord in this forest, and I look up ahead, and I see a dog, not on a leash. I don't like that, because then I saw 2 dogs not on a leash. Then I saw 3 dogs not on a leash. And they're 200 yards away, and then they see me. And I said, come on. Here they come. So be strong, Kevin. Don't show any fear. Good little dog. You know, they come up, and they're sniffing me, and we're safe, we're good. The owner, though, is not calling them. The owner is way down there. He seemingly doesn't care. I don't know if he sent them to come get me or what. But I will tell you this. Had the owner come and wrestled me out of the blue, the last thing I'd be asking is what his name is. I'd be saying, what is your insurance company? All right, that's what I'd be asking. The angel here is getting wrestled, and he says to Jacob, what is your name? So strange. I ask myself, why would the theophany, God, who knows all things, who knows this man's name, why would he ask him that? Unless he didn't ask it for his own sake, he asked it for Jacob's sake. Ladies and gentlemen, get this good and get it real good if you want change in your life. He didn't ask Jacob to tell him his name because he didn't know it. He asked Jacob to say his name out loud so he would hear who he is. What did Jacob come to God for? A blessing, right? And God says, if I give you a blessing, you, being you, will take that blessing and use it only for you. And I don't like giving blessings to people who are selfish, who are self-centered, and use people for their own good. So who are you? Jacob. Real change, number 3, it requires blunt admittance to God. You know, when Esau was done wrong, when he was defrauded by Jacob, Esau said to his mother, "Is not his name rightly Jacob? He is who he is. He steals things. He takes advantage of people." Jacob, God says, "You're in this predicament not because of Esau, but because of you. You've come to me to ask me to bless you because you're going to face an angry brother. I'm telling you, you're here not because he's angry for no good reason. You're here because of you. All your problems are because of you. What's your name? Jacob. Why are you named Jacob? Because in the womb, from the beginning, you began to take advantage of people, and all the way through life, you do you, and that hurts people. Who are you, Jacob? You've come to me for a blessing. There's no blessing in letting you be the same way and then just sanctioning who you are." And so too in our lives, real change doesn't take place until we see the need for change. What do we pray? We always pray, "God bless me," when we should be saying, "God change me." We say, "God, would you help my wife? She's just so difficult." And God would rather us come to him and say, "God, would you change me? Because I'm just so difficult." We go to God and say, "God, could you give me a better job? This job's so hard." When God would rather us come to him and say, "God, could you change me? I seem to have a problem every job I go to. God, could you just fix all the women and all the men in my life and my kids while you're at it, my in-laws and everybody?" When God says, "Just come to me and ask me to change you," then you can deal with all those people because you are your problem. Yeah, well, I'm not as bad as he is. Therein is the issue. And God will say to you, "What's your name?" You know, every name has a meaning. Have you noticed that? In Jewish culture, they were named based upon usually their birth. Why? Why? Because we are who we are. We're identifiable almost immediately. And that doesn't change. Let's look at the final piece of the puzzle. It's very quick, but it's very important. Verse 28, "And he said," the angel said, "Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel." What does Israel mean? "For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed." Here's the beginning of change. It only started after he admitted who he was. Verse 29, "And Jacob asked him and said, Tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And he said, Wherefore is it that thou dost ask after my name? And he blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. And as he passed over Peniel, the sun rose upon him, and he halted upon his thigh. Please don't get this final piece of the puzzle. It is crucial. You've got to be alone with God if you want real change in your life. You've got to. While you're there, you've got to be honest and then be aggressive and be intimate and be intense with God, just demanding help from him. And while you're there, admit who you are. Acknowledge bluntly that you are who you are. It's who you've always been. You don't like it. It stinks. It is what it is. And now you get to this point, and this is where the change happens. What did he first come for? A blessing, right? Did he get a blessing after he wrestled the angel? No. Did he get a blessing after he acknowledged who he was? Jacob? No. Did he get a blessing after he, outwitted and outstrengthed and outdueled the angel over the course of time? No. He got his blessing only after this. You ready? He got a blessing only after Jacob finally asked God a question. Which is why, number 4, here's where real change takes place. As long as it's about you, you'll never change. But if you can become analytical about someone other than yourself, if you can finally be interested in God, well, now we're making progress. Who was Jacob all about all those days? He, himself, and him, right? It was always about him from the womb. It's about me. I want the blessing. I want the birthright. I want the easy road. I want more cattle. I want my wife. I want my kids. I want my home. And I come to God and say, God, I want you to take care of me. I want you to be merciful to me. I want you to give me a blessing. And God says, well, what's your name? Jacob. And the light bulb went off, and he goes, I am a deceiver. I am a supplanter. I am always using people for me. And he stopped and said, I've been here the whole time for me. Who are you? What's your name? Tell me about yourself. Listen, you get alone with God and your list is give me food, give me clothes, give me a better marriage, give me a marriage, give me a good job, give me a better job, give me more money, make me a good person, make me that, do this, do that. And you never at all just stop and say, by the way, Lord, show me thyself. God, who are you? What do you want me to call you? I've come here every day to talk with you. I'm not even sure how you want me to refer to you. How do you feel about what's going on in my life? How do you feel about what's going on in this world right now? What is it you are looking forward to the most, God, about me coming to heaven? What are you doing right this moment? What are your plans for the future? God, how do you feel about history? How do you feel about Abraham? How do you feel about these great characters in the Bible? God, would you tell me about yourself? Tell me who you are. I want to figure you out. Are you really in control of everything or are you not? Do you want to bless me for this reason or do you not? Why are you doing what you're doing? What are you doing? Well, now, unknowingly, you are stripping yourself of who you are. You are letting that guy who is from the womb to tomb go behind you, and God is changing you, and God is saying, you're no longer Jacob, you're going to be Israel. You've got power with God, and I'm going to touch you in such a way that you're going to leave this place. You'll never sound the same. You'll never walk the same. And at the end of Jacob's life, which is still decades, do you know this? Jacob never, ever, from this moment on, took advantage of anybody else. You look in the Bible. He had a famine to deal with, and he never stole from anybody. He never manipulated anybody. He never, caused somebody to get the raw end of the deal. In fact, he was very upset with his sons when they started acting like him in the matter of Shechem. Jacob, from this point on, was a changed man. He didn't use people. He didn't abuse people. He didn't manipulate people. He was Israel, no longer Jacob. He would be referred to as a man who had power with God because he cared about God. When's the last time in prayer you just asked God a question and then just closed your mouth and listened? If you're not doing that, you're probably doing what you've always done, which is act who you are, but you just want God's blessing on it. I love this passage because it gives me hope that I don't have to be Kevin for the rest of my life. I can be someone God makes, but I've got to spend time with the Lord alone. How about you? You want change? You sick of being the same person? Sick of doing the same things? Sick of thinking the same way? There's people right in this room. I'm done. You can close your Bibles. You can stand up. Stand up. Stand up. There are people in this room right now because I know you so well, because it's my job to know you. There are people in this room right now who are absolutely miserable. I can see it. I know who you are. I see your faces. I know what your problems are. You're miserable. Guys, why? Don't you want to be joyful, peaceful, happy? Don't you want to have a life that's worth living? But you can't get out from who you are. It's what you do. It's what I do. It's who we are. It's got to change. It only changes if you do Genesis 32.